to What's in the Box, episodes of horror with Donna and Eric. I'm Donna,
And I'm Eric.
and today we're discussing the movie Halloween. We're doing a comparative between the 1978 version and the Rob Zombie version. Um, so, Eric, which one did you like better?
Um, Boy, I don't know if I liked either one of them better. Or maybe it's equal. And it
Equal?
also may have, yeah, it may have reinforced my dislike for the franchise too. So, um, I guess I'll say the first one.
The
Okay,
original?
this is the way I think of it. I understand why Halloween, the original. I guess we could call it. We'll call it the zombie version, and are we going to call it the original or the Carpenter version? But
I
um,
will say the original and the zombie version. Let's
the
just,
original one, you get why it's important and why people like it, and it really did put horror on a different path, and a lot of it's really good. My problem with the original Halloween is that I hate Jamie Lee Curtis, so I do not like, I just don't like her, so that's a problem. uh the zombie movie, if it was anything else, if it was a straight up slasher movie and we weren't dealing with the mythos of Michael Myers, it's a very good movie. But the second you incorporate the idea of what Michael Myers is and all the things that you've maybe learned up to that point, I think it's a terrible Halloween movie, if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah. Um, I- this was the first time I had seen the Rob Zombie version. And I was actually surprised that I actually liked it. I can't say I liked it more than the original. Um, I'll have to say the original is the one I like the best. And I don't know why I would say that. I'm not a fan of remakes or reboots or whatever you want to call
Yeah.
it. I'm a, I guess you call it a purist. I like the originals, even when we were talking about the what was it, the 2022 Hellraiser.
Hmm.
Um, eh, you know,
Yeah. Everything
the
that they don't get, it's like they don't get it. And
yeah,
it's also they have this desire to put their fingerprints on it.
right.
And in doing so, they almost always ruin what made the original special.
Yeah.
Now, as a Rob Zombie movie, I think this film is good,
Hmm.
and I think I mean I enjoy. I saw it, when it came out, and I liked it then, and I rewatched it, and I enjoyed the movie itself. But when I watch these two back to back, and then you see so much of the similarities, because I watched them like Tuesday, Wednesday. So like, I watched the first, watched the second, and then so it was really fresh in my mind. And you can see where he did shot for shot on some parts. And you can also see where he struggled to try and break out of the shadow of the original Halloween. And every time he did that, he made the idea of Michael Myers worse, I think.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but just a straight, if this was just a straight up slasher, if this was some sort of House of a Thousand Corpses 3, um, if this was a no name, if he came up with a clown face killer, whatever,
Yeah.
then yeah, I think it's a good movie. I just don't like all the steps they took to try and humanize Michael and also to try and justify Michael,
Hmm.
when we know from the first movie and all the movies that spawned that there is no justification. This isn't a case of environment or um his the way his family and life was, or his general makeup, or him being bullied. That none of that is what created you know the boogeyman.
Right.
So for Zombie to go out of his way to try and justify and to show us, oh, he's a troubled kid from a troubled house, and this is, his mom's a stripper, and his stepdad's abusive, and his sister's overly sexual in the house around them. He's torturing animals. He's bullied at school. So like when he stood up to the bully and he starts beating him in the woods, I think we're supposed to at least feel, I don't know if we were supposed to feel bad for the bully or feel good for Michael for standing up at that point. It's not, it's handled in such a poor way that you really just feel nothing either way for the, you just say, and I found a lot of the things they were trying to do to justify how Michael becomes Michael was just
Hmm.
silly.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And it
like
takes away from the scariness of it. It's
it
not scary at
does.
all because we
Yeah.
know if you look at Rob Zombie's version, he is 100% a product of his environment
Hmm.
from the home to the hospital.
Yep.
And everything that he does, you can come up with a justification. But in the original, there is no justification. He is simply considered evil,
Yep.
pure
Yeah.
evil.
Yep. And you lose the mystery, you know.
Right. Well,
Is he is he a, just this psychopath? Is there some supernatural reason he's doing what he's doing? You lose that mystery in the Rob Zombie because you're like, oh, like you said, it's completely because of his environment.
and he's no different than just any other crazy person.
Yeah.
And you can see with some of the interactions he has when he's in the hospital, that it's not just a case of him being purely, um, evil or whatever. Because he has a couple moments with the guard
Hmm.
that he does end up killing the guard, but at that point, he's already his blood's up and stuff. So you would suggest that that could be the reason why, and it wasn't anything else. But he was genuinely fond of that guy. It felt like at a couple different times. The guard was fond of him.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. It doesn't. He's a force of nature in the original,
Hmm.
and he is just some white trash idiot from in the zombie version, which that's zombies blueprint. If you watch any zombie film, that's how they always are.
Yeah.
It's always a poor white trash kind of situation. It's
Yeah.
never, and so I don't know. Like I said, it completely ruins the Michael Myers mystique.
It does. Yeah.
And yet, I thought they got the Michael Myers casting a little. He's way more imposing in the zombie film and
Yeah.
scary. I mean, you see some shots, and it seems like some of the women were taller than Myers in the original.
Yeah.
He seems almost tiny. And then you see him in the zombie one, and that's like, yeah, okay, that's the guy to be scared of.
Hmm. Yeah.
They kind of rectified that when they did the reboot or whatever they're calling that 3 movie thing that came out in, was it 2018, 2019, and 2021 or something.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Um, that Michael, and I think it's the same actor. He seems bigger, and maybe it's camera tricks or whatever, but he seems more imposing in that version of the original Michael. And I guess since it is kind of supposed to be a direct sequel to the first movie, we can say that's from the same timeline or universe. Um, I've never seen Halloween 2 that Zombie did. Most people say it's terrible.
Yeah.
I
That's what I've
think
been
overall,
hearing.
I
Yeah.
think as a complete slasher, this is his zombie. The zombie version is a good movie. It's just a terrible Michael Myers movie.
Hmm.
And we
Yeah.
and we could have done without 35 minutes of that backstory trying to show
Yeah.
us why who I was like, if anything Carpenter did correctly, it was starting us off with the immediate kill with the
Yep.
kid, and boom, okay, now we're in the future, whatever, 15 years later, 20 years
Yeah.
later, however it's supposed to be. And then you just have a story, and that to me is 10 times scarier than and that's the other thing is I think we're supposed to feel sorry for Michael Myers and
Yeah.
his situation the whole time, but I don't think I felt anything other than um I don't know, I felt like I was shrugging through that whole first 30 minutes of that movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
and
I
and,
think.
and the mystique is taken away with him killing so many people when at the
Hmm.
beginning of the original he kills just his sister,
Right.
and he's that age, and the costume is innocent. Even when they take the mask off, the kid is just he's what you picture in like a candy commercial, just and then the zombie kid is exactly what you're thinking of in the 70s of a kid that's always in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just nothing about him was personable or likable. And his and I guess, we don't know enough of him in the first movie to say that we liked him,
Right.
but we could definitely look at that first 10 minutes or 5 minutes, however long it is, and be shocked by what we saw. And I don't know if I was shocked at all. And that could be a case of we've been watching these movies for 40 years, and so it's hard to shock us now. And but the zombie Halloween has the aesthetics of what we see in theaters, over the
Yeah.
last 15 years. And you don't really get that with Halloween. And I know a lot of people originally would think of it as a bloody film, just like Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. They're always thought of as slashers and violent, but when you compare them to movies today, they're really not.
Right.
There's some
Yeah.
shocking that maybe, and you have to put your head in that time frame and go, okay, I can understand why this is shocking. But, comparative, of course, zombies Halloween is way bloodier.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Way
and
bloodier.
and that's kind of the stuff we look for now because we're desensitized and everything. But as a scary film or a horror film, of course, I think the original is much, much better done. And
Yeah.
maybe it's because it's all original. It's the first time we see some of these scenes that we've seen 1,000 times remade in different movies. And
Mm-hmm.
but you could definitely see it in the zombie version. There were whole sections that he basically just filmed frame by frame. It was almost like watching that Psycho remake.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I think the Rob Zombie film would have been just as decent if the characters, if it was John Doe,
right, for sure.
you know.
It's a good movie, but I
Yeah.
don't think it's a good Myers movie. Well, and you know what? If this was the first time we were introduced to Michael Myers, then you could be like, okay, I see what he's doing. And you would be like, oh, regular Rob Zombie film. And then you
Yeah.
might, from that point, go, oh, I kind of like it, like a Terrifier or something like that. I kind of like this character. It's interesting. But unfortunately, we have 25, 30 years of history before we're given this remake. And just like you said, remakes usually suck because of that.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, no, but yeah, as a film, I think it's done well, and you can see that he's improved as a director. If you've seen any of his other stuff that led up to him getting Halloween,
Yeah.
he's gotten better.
Yeah. It's funny because the Rob Zombie movie, with a few tweaks, could almost be a movie adaptation of Scary Bastard by Aaron Beauregard.
Oh yeah,
I don't know if you've read Scary Bastard, but it, like, the character, the imposingness of the character, the Michael, being, tall and just big like that and breaking out, just a few tweaks in the screenplay, and it would totally be a Scary Bastard movie
hmm.
adaptation. It's because that's, as I was watching it, I'm like, this kind of has Scary Bastard vibes to me. Um, so yeah, I just thought that was
Yeah,
interesting.
it's very interesting.
Yeah. Did you have any favorite parts of either movie?
Best part of the original is the Dr. Loomis. Donald Pleasance is amazing. That
Mm-hmm.
hopefully I stuck the landing on his last name. And that's the cool thing is that they were able to get enough money to bring him in to be. And I know probably by that time he might have been more B movie than he was, but he's been in a ton of stuff and he's just a good actor. And he sold why we should be scared of Myers.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of we didn't need the backstory. We didn't need 35 minutes of him being a shitty kid because in like 3 sentences, he explained why we were supposed to be afraid of this and why the town was in trouble. And you bought it, you believed it.
Yeah.
And so I thought my favorite part of Halloween is that. Um, in the zombie version, I'm trying to think. Like I said, it's not a bad movie. So um I think they did a little bit better job with the interaction between Myers and the victims at the end, the kill scenes and stuff.
Hmm.
It felt a little more believable and it had a better flow to it. There's a lot of weird, like in the original, and you can kind of see this in other movies, but where okay, he's dead, and then 3 seconds later he's not dead, and you're going through it again, and then okay, he's dead, and then he's not dead, and we're going through it again.
Yeah.
We had that like 5 times in the
Yeah.
original. I kind of liked how they did it in this one. It felt more. I mean, it could end the way they ended it. She had the gun to his head, it seemed like, when she pulled the trigger. Now we don't see it, we just hear the shot. So I'm gonna guess that part two opens with his hand slapping her arm and the shot hitting the ground so it doesn't shoot him in the face.
Mm.
Otherwise, then he is going to be a truly spiritual being.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if I'm interested enough to find out if that's what happened. So I don't know if I'll ever see Halloween 2. But I
Yeah.
did enjoy watching the first one.
Yeah.
Did you have a favorite?
So my favorite part in the original was when she's babysitting and Tommy keeps going, "Hey, there's the boogeyman out there." And
Yeah.
she looks out there and there's nothing. Um, I don't know, that's like super creepy to me. Where you got this kid and you're like, "No, Lori, he's out there." You're like, believe Tommy. If you would just believe Tommy, you wouldn't be in this position.
Right, but we already established early on that Tommy's kind of full of shit too, so that's a good
Yeah.
thing. So
Yeah.
he did a good the writing, him and it's Linda something, I think that co-wrote it. No, Deborah Hill. Him and Deborah Hill, I think, came up with the screenplay, and they did a really good job, I think, laying everything out. The blueprint's there. Some of
Yeah.
it's a little silly, like he's driving around in a stolen car from the insane asylum and it's got a giant state seal on it. And I feel like you would be able to find that pretty quickly in a small town. And
Yeah.
he's just cruising around, stalking people in this vehicle that
Yep.
he apparently just learned how to drive.
Yeah.
And so that is kind of weird. That's kind of a loose, and in the 70s, though, I can see how you get away with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So my favorite part in the zombie version um was the part where you see Danny Trejo and he must be with like a trainee and they go into his cell for the first time
yeah,
and he's like, "Don't
that's a
touch his
good scene.
stuff. Don't touch
That
his
is.
stuff." Because it just conveyed how much this man actually cared about Michael.
Yeah.
He's like, don't touch his stuff.
You know
You
what? And
know,
I'll tell you, sometimes I think he doesn't get enough credit for how good an actor he can be.
Danny Trejo. Oh yeah,
Yeah, because in
yeah,
this one, he really comes across as as that character. I mean, as a guy who has been in prison, is what's the word? Sympathetic to
hmm,
Myers' situation, understands the trauma that Myers has gone through, but also understands that he's a threat
yeah,
and
and
knows
yeah,
how to handle him.
yeah. And then the other part, same thing with when Danny comes after Danny Trejo's character comes after Michael escapes, and you can see he's afraid, um, but he wants to do everything he can to get this, I'll just call him a kid, back in his cell so nothing happens to him.
Yeah,
Um,
he's terrified. He's shaking and he's trying to get his
yeah,
handcuffs on him, and he knows everything. It's like everything. It's almost as if he was in the water, um, shark infested waters without a cage.
yeah,
Is exactly how he was handling the situation.
yeah,
Trying to be cool, trying to play it like he was in charge, but really, honestly, he knew any second the sharks are going to get him,
yep,
and that's what we end up getting in the movie. I hated the two, and you're supposed to, but the two idiot cousins who are using the job there as a way to score drugs and take
yeah,
advantage of the female patients. But I mean, I don't care how crazy or wild ass you are. I just don't see how anybody opens the room to Michael Myers' cell to do all that. You know what I mean? It's like I
yeah,
just don't get it. It didn't that doesn't make any sense. And nothing that they wrote could have made me be like, oh, okay, now I understand. It is
Yeah.
the dumbest plot point to get Michael free.
Yeah.
It would have been better for them to just have the guy go in there to try and bully him, to try and say, no, I'm in charge now. I'm the big, guy
Yeah.
on the block. I'm the new guard in charge.
Hmm.
That makes more sense than what they did. And that to me just seems like, oh, I don't know. What version did you watch of the Rob Zombie version of the thing? Because I've got the discs and I only had the director's cut.
Oh, I didn't. I think I watched it on Shutter.
Okay.
Um,
So
so
how long do you any chance you know how long the movie was that you watched?
I don't know. It's probably about 2 hours,
Okay, because mine
maybe.
was about 2 hours too. And
Yeah.
I didn't know if the director's cut in this case was going to be they added like 3 minutes or they added like 25 minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it sounds like this might be a 35 minute kind of thing. So, which it just, the movie was a tad too long.
Yeah. Yeah. And going into the next question about is there a part that you hated? Um, I hated in the zombie film what you've already mentioned is there was so much backstory on Michael.
Yeah.
You know, I was kind of like watching it and it was interesting and I was, you know, being able to follow the story, but I just thought, you know, is this the whole movie? Like, is
Right. And a
it,
lot of weird, again, yeah. I mean, I've gone over that thing and I totally agree that was the worst part. It's like them trying to pull this movie into the future or something. I don't know, you know, how most
yeah,
movies are nowadays. They just over explain everything.
yeah. And then in the Halloween one, um, I hate the original. I thought that whole scene with Annie getting stuck in the window.
It was just a reason to look at her butt, I thought.
Exactly. Yeah.
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 And then I was like, well, what are you gonna do? It's the
Yeah.
70s. That's funny
Like I
because
get
like if you
it was suspenseful, like, oh gosh, she's stuck and
well,
Michael's gonna get her and
right. And so you have that feeling that maybe Michael grabs her, pulls her through, and then that's something. And it also gives us an opportunity to see that those two sections of the house aren't together, but that doesn't play into anything later. Maybe when she gets in the car, it does, but if
yeah.
that's attached to the same thing, but it's kind of like the human, like you read stories from the 70s and 80s horror movies where they're like, they have the movie like Humanoids from the Deep. It's directed and there's no nudity at all. And then the guy that's producing it, Corman, he's like, no, this isn't going to do. We have to have nudity. So they cut a couple scenes where they have the fish people raping women and there's nudity and stuff. And it's like just flash scenes, couple, but it's just so they can have that. So it totally changes the vibe of the movie, things of that nature. But you hear about that all the time in Hollywood. The lady hanging out of the window with her butt in the air, that feels like one of those kinds of scenes where they're
Yeah.
like, hey, we need to have some TNA in here. So this is what you got to do. I know
Yeah.
like Broken Lizard, the guys who did Super Trooper, when they did the beer movie, Beer Fest, um, they were told they had to have X amount of boobs in it, which is why the movie opens with that weird sequence where they're at the big Oktoberfest and everybody's falling and they're grabbing shirts and ripping blouses down. And you get like a whole bunch of it in like 10 seconds, but it's all so that they could hit what the producer said they had to have for nudity. It's all in that very beginning scene. They never do it again. The rest of the movie is just normal movie. They said that's what they did to get it away, get the people off their back to do it. So it's always funny to see what the
Yeah.
people in charge do to ruin movies or, however enhance them in a way. But I think the only thing I really don't like about the original Halloween is Jamie Lee Curtis is in it. So other than that, it's probably okay.
Poor Jamie. Oh man. Uh, would you have liked to see anything in the Rob Zombie version that was in the original or vice versa?
Hmm. That's funny is we had these questions before the movies, before we sat down and talked about it. I should have thought about this stuff a little bit more. Act like I actually knew what I was doing because when I sit down to do it, and you think the stuff would come right to us, and I'm kind of stuck. But I know I was thinking about when I was watching the movie, but I didn't write anything down. So, um, what about you? While I ponder.
Um, I would have liked more blood in the original one.
Yeah,
But it was 1978, and you know,
It makes you wonder. I'd love to go back and see. I mean, we could compare it to movies at the time, but I have a feeling that that was considered pretty violent.
pretty violent, pretty
Yeah,
bloody. Yeah,
and that that was part of the allure. It was like, oh, this is amazing, that they're getting away with this. Um, yeah, but yeah, a little more. You know what it needed, and we needed the Friday the 13th violence that we get in the first couple of films, but those were a few years later.
yeah,
But you had some of the throat cutting, some of the more vicious kills with the knives and stuff. Well, he doesn't have to be over the top because Michael's really not.
yeah. Because didn't
Um,
he kill? Because Annie gets killed from behind in the car. He strangled her, right? He didn't
yeah,
like
yeah. It feels
slice
like he
her.
strangled two of them.
Yeah.
Um, and you know what's funny? We say, was there anything from the first movie you'd like to see in the second movie? Um, After watching them so close together, there's so much from the first movie that he just copied. So maybe that's why I can't think of anything immediately, because
Yeah.
there were plenty of scenes that he just redid. So, but if we go backwards, I think you're right. A little more blood, a little less. I wish he was a little bigger. I just wish Michael was bigger in the
More
first.
imposing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which maybe that makes it scarier. I don't know.
Yeah.
But like that scene where he lifts the guy up and he stabs him into the wall
Hmm.
or the door, wherever he's at. Because I think it's like a closet in the first one, and the second one, it's like the wall.
Right.
Um, and I think that was kind of silly too. I like it. I do like that. I like the aspect that in the first movie, he's just going house to house and doing what he's doing. But in the Rob Zombie one, they're all coming to his house to do these
Hmm.
things. And it's like, yeah, no, I don't see why anybody would think this is a good idea to go into
Yeah.
this dilapidated murder house
Right.
and do what all the things they're doing. And then she's like, "Get me a beer out of the fridge," but why would there be power?
Yeah.
None of that makes any sense. So I don't know. Maybe he got it out of a cooler and I just wasn't paying attention.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I guess I kind of wish the Rob Zombie Halloween film wasn't a Michael Myers film, but it was its own baby, and then we could have really enjoyed that. I think it would have been
Hmm.
fun, and I think
Yeah.
I wish Michael Myers was a little bigger in the
Yeah.
first one.
Yeah. So it doesn't sound like, those questions from back when we were doing the Texas Author Con interviews, Freddie, Michael, or Jason. It doesn't sound like you've changed your mind on Jason or
Oh yeah, for
Freddie.
sure. Yeah, those
Yeah.
two are definitely. I've enjoyed those movies way more. Now, what's
Yeah.
funny is that I watched. No, I've watched. We just watched these two. I mean, I don't know if you rewatched the original Halloween before we did this or not. I don't
Yep.
know how often you watch it. Some people watch it all the time, and I get that too. I can see how the original Halloween is a comfort movie for fans of the genre. Totally get it. I still think Halloween 2 is more enjoyable than the first one. And I really like Halloween 3. That has nothing at all to do with Michael Myers.
Hmm.
But watching these two movies has made me want to go and watch Halloween 4, Halloween 5, the H2. What was it? H2. It's not H2O, is it? The 20? I guess it's H20, but it looks like
H20. Yeah.
H2O. Yeah, those. It actually makes me want to go and see how they handled Michael to see, um, just to see because I know it's its own timeline now and people
Hmm.
like to rag on those, but it'd be interesting to see the way they changed everything up. Now what's interesting is that we don't find out that the Jamie Lee Curtis character is related to Michael until Halloween 2. That's
Yeah.
the thing they do in the old stuff, but in this one they just immediately lean into it. So
Yeah.
um I don't know.
So of course these two very different posters. I mean I have to say that the Rob Zombie one is more eye-catching.
Yeah, I
Um,
think it's scarier, it's cooler.
yeah.
The only reason you love the first Halloween is because it's very iconic.
Hmm.
But again, we've seen it for 20, 30 years or whatever. So, um,
Yeah. But I think it would be make more sense if it was the actual mask because he doesn't wear a pumpkin mask.
Yeah. I
you
think
know.
part of the reason that maybe this is this way is because his original plan was to do an anthology series. So you wouldn't. So the knife is supposed to be Myers, and then I bet you the pumpkin plays into the posters as they move forward. But then Halloween 2, they throw a wrench in it and say, "No, we're going to let Michael Myers be the main character again," which is why Carpenter probably walked away.
Hmm.
He just keeps producer credits or whatever it is he does. But he wanted each year to be a totally different thing, which is I think why they leaned into it for Halloween 3. Um, but of course, it didn't do as well as they wanted it to. So then they go back to Michael Myers. So,
Yeah.
but that would do make sense now. So we look at this, and I just was like, I thought let's put some character pictures up, and we can see what we like or didn't like. But yeah,
Yeah.
10 times scarier that the kid on the left, or maybe I guess it's my left, is the
Yeah. The original, and then this is the
yeah.
Rob Zombie character.
The Rob Zombie
Uh,
kid looks like he's going to go around and start stabbing people at any
yes.
moment. And the other
Yes.
kid is actually terrifying. And the way they handled it, the first person view,
Mm-hmm.
um, just everything about it, I thought was done so much better in the original. And we get it right away. Something's
Yep.
wrong with this kid. And then, so in your head, something's wrong with the kid. And then when you have, Loomis telling you all these things, then you're like, okay, it's even worse than we thought.
Yep. Yeah.
You don't need it spelled out. I threw
No.
her picture in. If we got the picture of the mom, I thought that was funny too, because at the end of the beginning of the first movie, we do see the parents, and they are traditional '60s, suburb parents, and
Yep.
so to me that makes it that much worse. I mean, obviously, Zombie has to put his wife in every movie.
Mm-hmm.
She gets this part. She's really good in it. I thought it was an interesting character, but I don't need any of this information to enjoy Michael Myers.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Dr. Loomis, I could not get into McDowell as Loomis.
He's a
I
really
just.
good actor, and I really do like him in a lot of stuff. But I don't really care about. I like the originals
Mm-hmm.
more, end of the world vibe.
Yeah.
He's way too touchy feely. I'm gonna make you better.
Yeah.
But again, there's something else we have to think of. I think we need to take a step back and look. Since Halloween, the original is taking place in the 70s, and he was a kid of so the doctors, we're talking a doctor that would have been trained in the 50s and 60s, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
His approach is going to be so much different than the Loomis character, because I assume we were talking in that movie that it was late 70s when he's a kid, and then when he breaks out it's the 80s 90s, something like
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
so the approach of the psychiatrist would be different, and we would maybe get a more touchy feely guy. So I mean, he does a good job as the doctor, but I don't think he does as good a job as portraying the evil nature of Michael.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
the
And
entire time we see the interaction with him, it's always him telling Michael he's failed him. I haven't been able to help you, blah, blah, blah. The other guy's like, you can't help the kid. He is the spawn of hell.
yeah.
There's nothing to do. Lock him
Yeah.
up, don't let him out. That is the doctor we needed in this movie. And I think
Mm-hmm.
he's amazing in it.
Yeah. And I just was like, partly it's the script for the zombie version, but when he's like, I have to move on, Michael. And then he's like on tour with his book, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, that's funny. I mean, but hey, that felt very 90s. That did feel
Yeah.
very 90s.
Yeah.
So,
Like I can't remember if in the original Loomis had written a book about um
no, I don't
yeah,
think so.
I
I
didn't
just
think
don't.
so.
It didn't feel like he didn't have that vibe to him.
Yeah.
His
But
vibe was more, we got to keep this kid locked up, and I don't want anybody to talk about him, look at him, know about him. And the only reason we're here, that's something we could talk about in the
yeah,
original, is when they drive up and then all the loony people are out, and then he's out. Michael gets into the car. I mean, it's how difficult is it to keep your windows rolled up and not mess, she didn't
yeah,
have to interact with anything.
yeah.
So, and
But
then
yeah,
he does break the window, and that's not noticeable at any other point with that car.
right.
He slams his hand against it, it shatters it. Well, it doesn't completely break it in, but it shatters the window, and you can't tell that.
Yeah.
in any other part. So, but yeah, I'm totally with you there. And, he's fine. He's a good actor, and I do enjoy him and stuff. And again, if this wasn't something that we had to compare to, then he may have knocked it out of the park. But when you look at the two together, especially so close together, when I watched it, he wasn't the highlight for me.
Yeah. Definitely not. And then Judith. I don't. Did they say her name was Judith in the original? I don't
I
remember.
don't remember, but the thing I wanted to highlight on this was how different everything was,
Hmm.
and um how creepy and how much more impactful the first one was comparative to the second one.
Yeah.
At no point do I think of Michael Myers as a sexual being,
Right.
and nothing about his action should ever be sexual in nature. Comparative, from the way it's been set up. He is a
Right.
force of nature. He is, the boogeyman. He is not there to do anything weird like that. And in the first one, we don't get that vibe at all. She has sex with her boyfriend. He comes into the room. Yes, he can see that she's naked, but he just kills her. He is
Yeah.
immediately attacks her, kills her, nothing else. When they do it in the zombie movie, he goes in there and he's slowly touching her skin,
Yeah.
almost like
Feeling her up. Yeah.
yeah, and he's just got this weird, unnecessarily gross sexual vibe to the whole situation. And then the
Yeah.
way he kills her and the nature, and the fact that they had a Michael Myers mask in there, which is just kind of silly. Um,
Yeah.
and
Because
you're telling me that after
her
he
boyfriend had
kills,
it. Yeah.
yeah, but he goes and kills everybody in the house. So why is the first kill so important? Is in the first movie, it's just him killing the one person in the house, and it's shocking, and the parents come home to it. But in this one, you kind of lose some of the shock when he kills his sister, because he's already killed the stepfather and the boyfriend, and he killed them both in very premeditated, horrific ways. And then he kills the sister after doing all those other things. And I guess maybe we're supposed to tie it together and say, okay, well, he's actually getting sexual satisfaction from these kills, and then it's confusing him when he gets to his sister, because she's a girl and the other two are guys. Now he kind of can figure out why he's getting aroused or whatever. But you're not supposed to have that at all with Michael Myers, I don't think.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
So
just that's not part of Michael Myers.
yeah,
It's
it ties into the Jason killing, or Jason's mom, whoever you want to do on Friday the 13th, killing the campers, punishing them for being sexual. In a way, the original Myers is kind of punishing her for being sexual, and then we find out, well, not really. He's just killing. He's a killing machine. He's whatever. So,
mhm.
you can take what you want from it. But Zombie really tries to force our vision into that. This is tunnel vision. This is what I'm doing. You're going to have to come along with it.
Yeah.
And I didn't think that was the right way to handle it at all.
Yeah, and I
Um,
mean, it wasn't the first time that he insinuated some kind of incestuous, because there was like the breakfast when they're at the
uh-huh.
table and Judith goes to, there was that weird interaction between the stepdad and Judith,
Yeah,
you
and
know?
then to add that layer of um, just inappropriate household, to
Yeah,
tell us that, oh, and here's another reason why poor Michael is the way he is, and there should be no apologies for Michael Myers.
yeah,
He's not formed because of that. He's supposed to be straight up just completely evil. And that's when you go back and you look at the faces of the two boys when we're introduced to them. That's the other thing, is Michael Myers in the first movie, you're not introduced to him until after the murder. They pull the mask off and it's just that kid. And you're like, well, that's crazy.
hmm,
We already know all the things the other Michael's going through and the way he acts and the way he behaves. It's not shocking at all that he killed everybody.
yeah. And of course we have Lori.
And I like
And
her. I thought the new one was fine. She's
yeah,
decent. And you know what? Jamie Lee Curtis is fine too in the movie. She's very girl next door. She plays that very well. She's not the life of the party. She kind of gets where she is in that friend group, which I thought, she does a good job with that. Um, is a little more playful though with the zombie one, just because
Hmm.
it's more in our time frame, kind of more of what I was 3 when this Halloween came out, probably
Yeah.
8 when I saw it the first time. So none of it clicks, but when you see this one, it does a little bit more. You're a little older or whatever. So
Yeah. I
I
do
do
like the
like
way
that.
they kind of made her more of a
Yeah,
fighter. Because Jamie Lee, she's just hiding in the closet, and she did stab
yeah,
him though at the
yeah,
beginning when he first came in the house, and then she dropped the knife, and you know,
yeah. I started that super long thing. Yeah, she stabs him with a coat hanger. She stabbed him. She tries enough, but I mean, don't stand in the house by a dark opening, and don't sit in the room with the killer in the room with you, even if you think you killed him. Get out of the house. I don't know how
yeah,
hard that is.
yeah,
Um, I did it. Yeah, I like they're both fine. I mean, like I said, I'm just not a fan of Jamie Lee Curtis. Some of them better. So,
and then we have the whole group there. Annie, I
which I
like how
thought was
they,
hilarious that they did the pictures, basically redid them.
yeah, yeah, and they kind of like stuck to, brunette, brunette, like a dirty blonde, dirty blonde.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool.
Um, I thought both Annies were fun in the
Mm,
movies. The exactly kind of character you need in this. Um, there's a good playoff with their father. Both of them had a good, with their dad being the sheriff. Um, Linda's, they basically have the exact same speech about
hmm.
the cheer coach, and they both do a decent job with it. They both come across. I thought the Linda from the '70s, the original, seemed 10 years older than high school. So I thought they
Well,
did
so
a
did
look.
Jamie Lee to me.
Yeah, she does. And when you go
Yeah,
back and see it, I could see maybe in the '70s thinking she could be a senior, but yeah, especially now, you go back and look at it and you think, yeah, she does feel, but that's about that everything is, right? Everybody's 10, 15 years older than they are when they're playing
yeah,
kids. Um, but again, I thought both well cast. I
yep,
have no problem with the cast on either one of these movies.
yeah. Sheriff Brackett. This guy, I don't know. The
I love him.
the one, the guy from the zombie version. I don't know. It just he looks psycho.
You know who it is, right?
No.
That's the voice of Chucky.
Oh, I didn't know
That's
that.
the guy that stutters from Urban Legends. That's Worm Tongue from Lord of the Rings. I mean,
Oh
that's
my
Brad
gosh.
Dourif. This guy's the guy. So yes. What was you were saying? He was creepy. Is that
He
what you were
just
saying?
was creepy,
Yes.
weird. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, he
just
does channel that very well. Um, yeah, I love him. I think he's great, and I thought he was good as the the sheriff because they don't ask the sheriff to do anything. You know, I
yeah.
thought the original sheriff's really good too. They both actually. I thought the zombie version was a little more realistic. The doctor shows up and says, "Hey, all this stuff's happening," and the guy's like, "Well, I don't have any proof of this, so I don't need to listen." The other
Yeah.
guy's like, "Yeah, no, 100%. I'm buying in with whatever you're telling me."
Yeah, it was
So
the trench coat
yeah, but he was
back in
playful and fun. He came across the original comes across as like like one of their dads. He's just
hmm.
a nice guy, small town sheriff, doesn't see anything. Zombies guy, he's seen something at some point, and he kind of looks at everything through that lens. It felt like,
Yeah.
but I thought they both were decent for what we needed.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't hate the zombie version of the sheriff,
Oh
the
yeah,
Rob
yeah, yeah.
Zombie.
No, totally get it.
I just he was like I didn't expect the sheriff to be that creepy, you
Yeah,
know?
because he does kind of have that weird. I may have somebody in my basement vibe while
Yes.
going through everything, but I
Yeah.
have a feeling that just happens to be. I think it's just when the zombie mythos kind of settles on the cast, and they all kind of have that vibe.
Yeah.
Because the stepfather at the beginning is another famous actor that's in all his movies, and he's the same way. He felt
Yeah.
like he was a sexual predator.
Yeah.
So it just feels like that zombie leans into it way too much.
Yeah. So here's our
Now
two
here they're both
Michaels.
very, imposing. We're not right next to Myers from the first one, so he's scary. The
Yeah,
idea that he doesn't talk, that's the other thing. So we saw Myers talking in the zombie movie, so we know he can, Maybe he doesn't talk by the time he's an adult, but we still had that shattered in our version or the original version. The kid never doesn't say a word.
never
He
spoke.
never
Yeah.
says a word. So it's almost, he's almost inhuman in that way.
Hmm.
There's no nothing for us to connect to. And then, we're supposed to connect with the kid as we see how terrible his life is in the zombie version. And then, yeah, he doesn't talk and he's imposing and pretty big and scary. The best thing you can see is when he nails the boyfriend against the wall with the knife.
Yeah.
It feels way more believable in the zombie version because the guy's just so much bigger.
Yeah.
But then we can also go back and say, well, doesn't that make it more supernaturally scary that the little Michael Myers did that in the first
Little
one?
Michael Myers.
So yeah, I know,
Yeah.
right? It feels like I patted him on his head. Look at him. Look at him trying.
Yeah.
But
Good
yeah,
for
no.
you,
So
Mikey.
I thought he did
Yeah.
really well with the interactions with Lori. Both times they're very scary. I don't understand why he didn't just open the closet. He didn't have to. So in the first one, she's hiding in
Yeah.
the closet. He starts breaking through the closet. For her to get out, she just opens it, slides it open and walks out.
Yeah.
So he could have just opened it. Now in the zombie, they fixed that by making her crawl through the broken walls.
Yep.
He has to break into the wall. And then again, it shows how much more imposing he is. And so that's
Yep.
something Zombie does really well. He captures how scary it is and how nothing is going to stop him from getting to his goal. And then in the original, we're like, well, it's scary simply because it's a situation that nobody's seen on film really up to that point. But it's nothing to do with the fact that he can break through a closet wall, a
Yeah.
door.
I wish in the scene where Michael in the Rob Zombie version, in the scene where Michael has the picture after he's got Lori in the basement or
Oh,
whatever,
yeah. Yeah.
I really wish she would have figured it out.
Do you think she was ever told that she was adopted?
I don't know. Um,
Because I got the opinion when they were telling when the sheriff was telling the story. I took the baby and I just took her somewhere and dropped her off at a different town. He just took her to like what the hospital or the
yeah,
whatever and just leaves her. So she'll have no backstory. He's the only one that knows they're related. So I have a feeling that even the parents didn't realize that she was from that family. I think they thought they just adopted a child.
yeah.
But yeah, I totally get it. You want them to click and go, oh, I get it. But I don't think she had any frame of reference to get it. Again, I
Hmm.
bet you we see Halloween 2 and it explains it a little bit
Yeah,
more and then
maybe.
we know.
Yeah,
But then at that point we'd have to watch Halloween 2. And so it's just the lose-lose. So I'm okay not knowing. But yeah, I thought it was kind of weird though when he pulls out the picture. Again, what are we doing here?
yeah.
He's not supposed to be this, he's trying to connect
Human.
with her.
He's
Yeah.
not supposed to be human.
And at that point, you're just like, well, I mean, I get it, but it takes away it in a way it weakens the whole mythos of Michael Myers.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I was kind of waiting for like him to pull his hair back from his face and her to go, "Why do you look like me?"
yeah, something like that. Now that would have made
Yeah,
sense if they wanted to do that, but they don't even
yeah.
do that. He doesn't even like
Show his
attempt
face.
to
Yeah.
try and
He
show that
just takes
he's
his mask off and that's it.
yeah.
And then the hair and you
And
can't see
again,
nothing.
he somehow perfectly was able to hide a mask and a murder weapon in the house, you know, for him to discover 20 years later or 15 years later, however long it was. I thought that was silly. There's no way that the cops wouldn't have found it. You wouldn't
Yeah,
think.
and we know he can talk, so why didn't he just say to her, "You're my sister"? You know?
Yeah, and at that point, he hadn't talked in what,
Yeah,
10, 15 years? I think the doctor said when he quit, I have to move on. You haven't even spoken to me in 10 years. So I get that part, but yeah, you're right. I mean, that if you're gonna show us he can talk, if you're gonna make it this, if you're gonna try and have him have human connection, he should have tried to at least made a noise or something. At that
hmm
point, you've dropped the ball. he dropped the ball trying to make him into a person.
Yeah, and I think it dropped the ball too of why even bother having him try to communicate to her that they're brother and sister
Right.
when you're
Now,
not
and
gonna.
that's something I don't know, or at least I never caught. I didn't understand. I mean, is he upset that he didn't finish the job in the original, and that's why he wants to kill Lori? Because he,
But does he really want to kill her? Because he
I,
could have
he
killed her. He just took
right,
her to the
and
house.
right, and so in the original though, he tries to kill her in the first. Now in that one, you have the idea that the only connection they have is that she went to the house and he saw her,
Yeah.
and so we don't know that they're related. And then in the second movie, we find out they're related. He still tries to kill her, but he doesn't. Then we don't have, and I don't know. I'm not well versed enough to know if in the fourth, fifth, or the H2O or whatever, if the whole point is him coming back to kill her. Because that felt like the vibe, right? In when they
Hmm.
did the reboot, that felt like he was coming back to kill her, or that she's so terrified he's gonna come back to kill her.
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder exactly what Zombie thinks that the vibe is. He gonna move in with his sister? Or was he, I mean, it didn't make any, why wouldn't he just try and kill her?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and again, that's the humanization of a thing that can't be or shouldn't be.
Yeah.
It's like them saying, "Oh, giving names to hurricanes," or trying to give characterizations of humanity to bears or whatever they're doing to try and make us connect with these things. Sometimes they're just forces of nature, and we just have to let it be what it is. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, as far as the second Rob Zombie one, I mean, if I run across it on TV one day, I might, you know,
I mean, yeah, I don't
leave
think
it
I'd ever
on.
plan. Yeah.
I don't think I'd ever personally, seek it out to watch it. Um,
Yeah, the first
so
one I threw this in there because this is from the second one. This is Zombie, but this is basically the same vibe. He did a very good
hmm.
job of giving us Michael watching them. And then the original, it was always Michael in the car watching
Yeah.
them. So, except for when they get the hedge, I should have got that picture of the hedge mage that we've all seen, where he's standing at the hedge and then he disappears and the
Hmm.
friend goes. Um, but it's got that same vibe, and I thought they did. But both movies do a very good job of giving us that creepy stalker vibe that unsettles the main character, but they don't really know why.
Yeah.
And the wide shot, good lord, it felt like Carpenter had just learned about wide shots because every shot was a wide shot where they'd have the main character, and then all of a sudden, you in the background you might see the car drive by, or Michael in a window or something. But it was always so we'd have these gigantic shots, and maybe it's because it was film and it's the cinema, and we're so used to watching everything on our phones, or the computer
TV.
screens, everything's so
Yeah.
tiny, compact, that they don't film for that kind of stuff anymore. Rarely do you get to see a movie that takes that kind of scope into account. And so, but when I was watching it, I kept thinking, man, this feels so antiquated comparatively to what we do see. But I did enjoy it because I do love a good movie. I
Hmm.
love old school theater movies and stuff. And if you have the box set, or if you have an opportunity to get the box set, watch the 35th edition. They've cleaned it up so well. It's beautiful to watch on Blu-ray.
Oh,
And then the
right.
zombie movie, which is so funny, is the complete opposite. They went out of their way to make it grainy and dirty.
Yeah.
And so when you're watching it, you feel like you're seeing a movie from the 70s that hasn't had an opportunity to be cleaned up. That's the best thing about Blu-ray to me, is when they get some of these old school movies and they're able to clean up the originals, and you get this just beautiful what the director was thinking was going to happen, but you've never actually seen it because we didn't have the technology at the time. So that's one of the things I do love about Blu-ray. So,
Yeah.
and
But
so I
all in
had,
all, they
yeah,
were
I mean,
entertaining. I mean,
yeah,
I didn't hate the Rob Zombie one, and
nope.
I like the original Halloween because it's the original.
And it has tickled my curiosity with Myers, and I do want to. I think I may end up sitting down and watching some of the other ones because I know I've seen them, but probably only once. I remember
Yeah.
seeing them all in the theater, And and I would have been way too young to pay attention to things that I'm interested in watching now. And more importantly, I'm really interested in watching some of the behind the scenes and the featurettes. That's what I really like about Blu-rays. You get to watch those. That was a
Yeah,
cool thing on the box set. You get it had 2 discs in the original Halloween. The second disc was all just documentaries.
I love that.
And the zombie was the same way. First disc was the movie, some stuff, and then you got another like 4-hour documentary on another disc. And I was like, oh, good. If I had more time, I'd have watched all those instead of probably the movies. If we had a different plan going on. So, but
Yeah,
yeah, I'm going to sit down and try and watch some of the other ones. But overall, um, it's just not a franchise that I ever gravitated towards as a kid. So I don't have that um, just blind love for it that I do with the Friday the 13th and the Nightmare on Elm Street franchises. And I don't know why. It's just probably how it worked out. Just which movies did I see first?
yeah, yeah. I don't, I don't think I've followed 100% all of the Halloween movies. I've of course seen the first one. I probably have seen the second origin, the original second. I've definitely seen the third because that will always stick with me just from that jingle alone. Um, but as far as any of the other ones, I think the last one I remember watching is the one where she's in the basement and the house blows up. I don't know which one that is.
That's the first of the reboots, I
First
think.
of the reboots. Yeah.
Yeah, because she thinks it's dead, and we thought that was going to be it. And they're like, "Oh no, we're going to make another movie." And then they
Yeah.
made the worst movie ever made, and then they came out with a third one, which I've been
Yeah.
told is terrible too. But I will refuse to watch that one. I was so angered by the. I didn't see the second of the reboots when it came out, but it was on Peacock, leading into they were going to put the one that just came out, Halloween Ends. So Halloween Kills is the next one. So I always watch Halloween Kills, and I'm like, I'll watch it tonight, and then tomorrow Halloween Ends comes out. I watched Halloween Kills. It was so terrible. I couldn't even. I almost
I
canceled
didn't.
Peacock. I was just so irritated by the whole thing.
Yeah, I
So
didn't even finish Halloween Kills. I'm like, oh, I'll put this on one night. It was probably like, oh, I've been scanning the streaming services for about an hour trying to find something to put on. So I just grabbed
yeah,
that and I was like, this is
it's
dumb.
terrible. I mean, I shockingly terrible. I don't even understand because I thought the reboot, the first one, I thought it was very good. It was such a fun tie into the original movie. If you were to ignore everything else and you go from movie one to this movie and you just ignore everything in the middle, it works. And it's very well done and well acted. And then they do Halloween Kills, and I thought, oh man, this is a slap to the face of people that watch. Yeah, I'm like, thank God this is a Halloween movie, because if this had happened to a Friday the 13th movie or Nightmare on Elm Street, I'd probably like be, as I tell Dawn all the time, I'm gonna have to write a letter to the editor. We were watching stuff, we were watching like Stargate, when it was a TV show. We were watching it now. I'm like, I'm gonna write a letter to the editor because I can't deal with this episode because of this. That's kind of how annoyed I was with the other thing. So yeah, and I'm just happy it wasn't one of the franchises I love that they did this to.
Yeah, that would have definitely sucked.
Okay,
Yeah.
so now we're going to do the Stephen King or not Stephen King book of the week. And usually Donna has this, but I have one that actually ties into our discussion tonight. And the book is called Shock Value. And it's by Jason Zinoman. And it is basically, it's nonfiction, and it's about the horror cinema of the 70s and how it reinvented horror and has given us the blueprint for what we basically all love today. And it starts off kind of crapping all over the horror that I love from the 50s and the 60s, which is, wasn't the best way to start it, but it's a very good book. And they deep dive into Wes Craven and Carpenter, and they talk some about Roman Polanski, and let me see some other, and I want to say they talk about Dan. I want to say his name's Dan Bennett, the guy that was the co-writer of the Alien franchise. kind of came up with that stuff. So it goes into all the things that happened in the 70s that allowed the horror genre to turn into what it became and what gave us Halloween and Friday the 13th. And also that weird arc that we already discussed earlier on, where we talked about, The Exorcist, Rosemary's Baby, all those science or what's the word, supernatural
Hmm.
horror, Amityville horror, all those kind of things.
Omen,
This
yeah.
discusses kind of that, also that path too, because we have that more mature, more quote unquote adult horror that was actually getting some accolades. At the same time, we also had that the underbelly, which is where we're going to get the Wes Craven, Last House on the Left, The Hills Have Eyes, eventually Nightmare on Elm Street, and but it focuses on all that stuff, and it's really well written. This guy is I want to say he's a journalist that he writes for a couple different publications, or at least he used to. And this book right here focuses on all the things that we love as fans of horror. And it's a pretty good book. It's a pretty thick book. It's like 250 pages filled
Yeah.
with notes and a lot of quotes, and there's some photos in it. And if you haven't read it, I think if you love movies, this is a book you should read,
Yeah,
especially if you love
definitely
horror
interested.
movies. Yeah.
Definitely interested in checking that out. I never thought I'd like nonfiction books about movies, but then I read that, The Making of the Dog Soldiers, and I really
Yeah.
enjoyed that.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
always fun to get a little extra,
Yeah.
get a little behind about stuff. And most of the time you'll see stuff that you realize you already knew because of so many documentaries and all that stuff. But this
Yeah.
one actually had some things that I hadn't thought of or come across, So it's a good read. It's a quick read. The guy's a good writer. That's what's
Yeah.
important. Usually with nonfiction, it's boring and you just lose your interest because it's like reading a history book or whatever. And so this guy knows how to do it and do it in a way to keep you going, flipping the
Nice.
pages.
Now, do you think it's kind of like, would you call it kind of like a paperbacks from hell for movies?
Oh, not at all.
No?
Because he isn't going to break down all of the different movies and stuff. What he's doing is saying, I have like 5 people that are behind the revolution, and here's why I think this kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
And so he
Okay.
isn't really concerned about showing us all the different movies that came out that are cool at that time. He's really trying to show us why the studios and maybe moviegoers themselves turn their back on horror, which is the Vincent Price and the Peter Cushing House of Horrors. By the 70s, they had all kind of lost their staying power, I guess, and most of their stuff they were doing were more comical, more tongue in cheek, poking fun at the stuff that they had done earlier when they were icons of horror, and they were more now being seen as a joke, really. They're on
Mm,
late night TV, they're poking Vincent Price is on the Muppets, that kind of stuff. And then he goes into saying, "Hey, look, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Here's Halloween. Here's these movies that were showing us that horror wasn't these silly old men, doing these things, but that there was a pathway for us to find it and get into what we embrace in the '80s is really what our brand of horror, I would say.
okay. Now, what was it? Shockwave by
Shock
Jason
value,
Shock Value.
and the link will be below.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for joining us on another episode.
Take it easy.